This is part 25 of Entity Framework tutorial. In this video, we'll discuss creating an entity for the bridge table in a many-to-many relationship with code-first approach. In the previous session of this video series, we have discussed a scenario in which an entity is created for the bridge table in a many-to-many relationship with database-first approach. In this video, we'll discuss doing exactly the same thing with code-first approach. So based on the classes that we're going to write, we want the entity framework to be able to create these three tables: courses, students, and this bridge table. This bridge table is going to store the data for the many-to-many relationship between courses and students tables. So to achieve this, we would design our classes as shown here. Now, if you look at the students table, it has got student ID and student name columns. So to represent those columns, we have these two scalar properties here, student ID and student name. And students table has got one-to-many relationship with student courses table. So we have a navigation property here, student courses, which is returning an I list of student courses. That is a collection of student course objects, because students has got one-to-many relationship, so we should be able to navigate from student to student courses. That's why we have this navigation property here. And similarly, if you look at the course class here, course class has got course ID, course name, so those properties are going to represent course ID and course name columns. And if you look at this courses table, it has got one-to-many relationship with student courses table. So to capture that, we have this navigation property here, student courses, which is returning again a list of student course objects, a collection of student courses. Okay, and this is the class for this bridge table. So if you look at this bridge table here, we have got student ID, course ID, enrolled date columns. So to represent those columns, we have these three scalar properties here: student ID, course ID, enrolled date. And if you look at student ID and course ID properties, we're using two attributes here. The first attribute is the key attribute. Keep in mind, in this bridge table, we want student ID and course ID columns together to be the primary key for this table. So it's a composite primary key there. So to achieve that, we have decorated both of these properties with key attribute. And then notice that we are also using column attribute, and then we are specifying the order parameter. We specified order as 1 for student ID and order as 2 for the course ID property. That's because we want the student ID column to be created first and then course ID. That's why we have specified the order there. And then enrolled date gets created. And then from student course, we should be able to navigate to the course entity, and similarly we should be able to navigate to student entity as well. That's why we have got course and student navigation properties. So based on these classes, entity framework should automatically create these three database tables. Let's look at that in action. Let's flip to Visual Studio. So this is the same example that we worked with in the previous session. So I'm going to get rid of this employee model.edmx file which we generated from the database, and then I'm also going to get rid of the connection string from the web.config file. Webform1.aspx and its code behind are not going to change in any way. So now to this project, let's go ahead and add a new class. Let's call this course.cs, and to speed things up, I'm going to copy and paste the properties that I have already typed. So this is exactly the same code that you have seen on the slide. Now let's go ahead and add another class file, and let's call this student.cs. And again, this class is going to contain student ID, student name, and a collection of student course objects. Let's add another class for student course, and this class is going to have these properties. Alright, now we need employee DB context. Now look at this, we have some compilation errors here. That's basically because the key attribute is present in system.component.model.data annotations namespace, and the column attribute is present in system.component.model.data annotations.schema namespace. Alright, now we need to add another class file, and let's call this employee dbcontext.cs. And we want this class to inherit from DB context base class, and this class is going to have three properties: courses, students, and student courses, which are going to return their respective DB set of that object. So DB set of course objects, DB set of student object, and DB set of student course objects. Okay, alright, and the next step is to include a connection string within the web.config file. So I have already typed the connection string, so let's copy and paste it right there. Alright, so with these changes, before we actually run this project, let's go to SQL Server Management Studio and delete the sample database. So now we don't have the sample database. So when we run this webform1.aspx, first of all, at the moment when we compile the solution, we should not have any compilation errors. So we have an error here. That's basically because look at the collection here, student courses. Okay, now this doesn't have add object method. Instead we have add method there, so let's go ahead and use that. Similarly here, instead of delete object, we have remove method. Alright, with these changes, let's go ahead and run this now. So now the sample database and the required table should be automatically created, and the relationship between the table should also be established. So look at that, we don't have any data in the database tables. That's why the web form is displayed blank. Let's refresh this databases folder. So there we have the sample database, and if you look at the tables here, look at the courses table. It has got course ID, course name. Course ID is the primary key. Similarly, if you look at students table, we should have student ID and student name, with student ID being the primary key. And if you look at student courses table, we have got student ID, course ID, and enrolled date. And look at that, student ID, course ID together, they are forming the primary key for this table, and they are also foreign keys to the respective tables. Okay, so now let's go ahead and execute this insert script here to insert some test data, and then let's reload this web form. So Mike is enrolled in C# and ASP.NET. John is enrolled in C#, ASP.NET, and SQL Server. Now when we click assign WCF course to Mike, Mike should be assigned to WCF course. At the moment he is not assigned to WCF, but once we click that, reload the web form, look at that, Mike is assigned to WCF. When we click this button, we should be able to remove John from SQL Server course. Let's reload that. Did we click it? Okay, let's see why it's not working. So if you look at webform1.aspx, if we go to the source, I think, look at that, the on-click attribute is missing there. That's the reason. So let's copy this on-click attribute here, and then if you look at the event handler name here, it's button2_click. So let's copy and paste it right there. And then now let's run this. And let's click this button, remove John from SQL Server, and let's reload this. Notice that John is removed from SQL Server course. Alright, so we have seen how to create an entity for the bridge table using code first approach. That's it for today. Thank you for listening. Have a great day.